we called it battle fatigue, and you'll get over it. It didn't get over it. It was getting worse. Now, in my book, I didn't have it in there. Then my daughter made me put it in my book, my daughter Paula. And she said, you've got to tell people what your flashbacks were. I said, well, they were just horrible. And then finally she said, well, I think maybe they'd like to know. Well, all the flashbacks from different guys are all different. But my flashbacks were, I keep seeing, and they'll happen quickly or when I'm sleeping especially, I see the invasion over and over again. I see the body parts. I see the guy screaming, "Mama, mama." And it's all magnified. And it's just a horrible feeling. And it kept getting worse. Well, when I came out of the Navy, I didn't talk about being in the service. I didn't want to talk about the war, because I figured they'd throw me in an insane asylum. I'm very honest with you. I'm telling you the truth. I felt I would wind up in a mental institution. And what happened in my training, I spent a few weeks or so in a mental institution taking care of patients, and it scared the heck out of me. So I didn't want that. So I never told anyone. So finally, I was at the veterans, and then finally he says, "You ever wounded?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to finally tell you, at 66 years, and I was doing the craziest things, Ben. I was self-medicating myself with alcohol. I was doing the craziest things. Let's say if you were talking to me and you said, Jack, I got this problem and so forth. You got a financial problem. I would write a check for $200 and say, here's a gift. And I was draining my bank account, was not being refilled. And I was draining and causing problems with my wife. I was telling bosses off. I was doing the craziest things and I couldn't understand. And I justified what I did, Well, it just turned out that I wound up finally telling this guy all these things that are happening to me. And he said, you've got post-traumatic stress. And I said, I've never heard of it because we did not know the word post-traumatic stress. So I wound up, he set me up with a therapist, a psychiatrist first, and he gave me a bunch of tests. And then he says, you got some serious problems. Then he set me up with a veteran, and a guy named Dylan Bender, great man, very compassionate. Well, the first session I had with him, and I was reluctant about going, but my first session with him, he took me back to Normandy. And it was so traumatic for me. I was crying. And then he said, Jack, what we're going to do is we're going to melt those cubes that of memory in your head, and then we're going to wind up. You will be able to talk about it and get back to normal. And he says, I will see you next week. And in my mind, I looked at him and I thought, and I said, the hell you will. I'm not coming back, because I didn't want to go through that again. And then he said, I want you to think about it. So I left, and I figured 66 years of doing the craziest things. If you invited me to your house, I would not bring one glass of a bottle of wine. I would bring a magnum of champagne or a gallon of wine, so I would not run out. And I was with my family on Thanksgiving at my son's house, and we are playing, I'm drinking all the wine I brought and everything. And when they set the table on Thanksgiving, and I sat down at the table, they brought the meal, my face fell right into the plate in front of my family. It was the most embarrassing thing. And they were going to have an intervention with me. And then my daughter Paula, who was like a therapist, she got me to go to a grief recovery program she was in. She's very good at it. And she got me to finally cut back on the liquor. And from cutting back on the liquor, I finally wound up going to the the therapist, and I went 3.5 years with this therapist, and he finally, little by little, cured me of it, and then I was able to talk about it, and then finally write a book. And this is just kind of a short book and all. I kept it very honest, and I kept the book cheap, just so I want people. I give away a lot of my books because I want people to know you don't have to be in a war to go through post-traumatic stress disorder. If you've got any kind of stress or any problem, and I tell people when I speak at different places to get help. And if you know a veteran, and I plead with veterans, if you're a veteran and you're going through this thing where you're thinking of suicide, for God's sakes, don't do it. Please. And I say this because what I went through, and now I'm able to just be free to talk about it. I go to schools and everything else, and it makes a big difference. It's made a whole change in my whole life now.